Well, Frank, another big day for Donegal, another big day for Frank McGlynn. Fifth final in a row, sixth final in total during your career, so you're well used to big days in Clonus with Donegal.
Yeah, that's suppose 6 years, 6 finals in 10 years. It's not bad, and every day you learn something. So you do, and you learn a lot from every Ulster final you play. And so I suppose over this past 4 years we've learned a lot, and the more so in 2013 with the defeat against Monaghan. Took an awful lot from that game. And I suppose the thing that's most pointed about Ulster finals is it's all on the day, so it is, and it's really a matter of what team performs to the best of their ability on the day.
Yeah, something to prove last year against Monaghan, because obviously 2013 was a big blow and a big disappointment. The manner of the defeat as much as anything, Frank. And Donegal came back with something to prove last year and proved it beyond any reasonable doubt. How do you approach this particular game? Because it's the third year in a row, it's one apiece in terms of victories. Anything different in the mindset?
Well, not really. I suppose from the defeat of 2013, we're going to be no different than Monaghan. Both teams have tasted success and failure, so to speak, on Ulster final day. So both teams are going to have that experience of both, and everybody's going to be doing everything in their power to avoid the defeat on the day. And I suppose we've been lucky. We played Monaghan, many times over league and championship this past 3 to 4 years. So we've learned a lot from both styles of play, and we know each other inside out. So as a matter on the day, it's going to be just what team gets up to that level or gets above the other team and level of performance wise.
Yeah. It's interesting, Frank, when the draw was made. I mean, we looked at it and we thought, what a hard draw for Donegal, having to beat Tyrone, then Armagh, then either Derry or Down. And we looked at the other side of the draw with a bit of envy and looked at Monaghan, you've only got Cavan, and then you'll beat Fermanagh or Antrim. And that's the way it's panned out. But football just isn't as simple as that. It's much more complicated.
Yeah, I suppose that's it. I suppose most people would have thought the hard work was done after beating Tyrone in the primary round and then going to the athletic grounds and defeating Armagh. But as you saw, Derry was the biggest challenge we met to date, and that's the way football is, especially in the Ulster province. If you look at the teams that Monaghan have beaten, Cavan and Fermanagh, they're tipped to have good runs in the qualifiers, and they're strong sides. I suppose the only advantage we would take off it, we've had three good tests against top quality opposition, so you always learn against them top quality teams. So hopefully we'll be putting that to good use in the Ulster final day.
A lot of us got carried away after the performance in Armagh, and I mean, I was talking to Rory earlier on, made a point to him. He played it down, and I was speaking to Michael Murphy. He said, well, maybe Armagh just were poor on the day, and maybe a wake up call with the Derry game, because again we all expected Donegal to breeze through that, Frank. So, but that's no harm going into a final now against Monaghan to have that test against Derry.
No, definitely not. I suppose Tyrone was a hard fought victory in the athletic grounds in Armagh. I do think things went right for us in the day, and very little went wrong for us, whereas very little went right for Armagh in the day, and sometimes that happens, and I suppose going into the Derry game, I think everybody in the camp knew that it was going to be a very difficult task. We saw from Derry in the performances in the league, they can make it very difficult for the top teams in the country, and that's what they did in the day, and they brought a lot of physicality to the game, which was a slight change for the Derry teams, in past years, and they're very well organised by Brian McIver, and definitely, we look back, and we're definitely glad to be in an Ulster final after coming through that game.
Yeah, and if it was a surprise that they brought physicality to the game, it'll be no surprise Monaghan bringing, because they play a very physical game, and on top of that, they got some very talented forwards as well, Frank. So a big challenge.
Yeah, well, that's it. I suppose most Ulster teams are physical, but I think Monaghan would probably be the top of that scale, and having played them this year in O'Donnell Park in the league, and last year's Ulster final, and indeed in 2013, we know what they bring to the table, and as do they know what we're going to bring to the table, and definitely as regards to their forwards, if you take the two Hugheses and Conor McManus and those types of forwards, indeed Conor McManus doesn't really need space at all. If he gets the ball in his hands, it's almost too late, so it is at times. So we definitely know that it's going to be a massive ask to keep those players out of the game, but I suppose if we're going to win the Ulster final, that's the job that has to be done.
Sure, you know better than anyone, Frank, about a football career. It's your 10th season now as a senior inter-county footballer with Donegal. You were in an Ulster final in the very early stages, and then there was a big gap before you got into your next one. Occasions like this don't come around, although it's our 5th final in a row. We're very fortunate that this group of players have been able to achieve that. Some players play for 10 or 12 years and never get to a final.
Yeah, well, I suppose I was lucky enough to join a strong panel in 2006. We reached an Ulster final in Croke Park, and I suppose at that time you would have thought that you were going to be in Ulster finals, year in year out, and there was a bit of a spell there where we just weren't competing at that level, and then when Jim took over, you were spoiled with Ulster finals, and again with Rory now. But it's definitely something that we're well aware that players can play for a long time without reaching one. So every one you do reach, you have to make the most of it.
Yeah, do you still get excited about the prospect of playing in it, Frank, despite all the years that you've been there and the success that you've had as an Ulster final winner and an All-Ireland winner and an All-Star?
Definitely, there's something definitely special about even pulling in the bus to Clonus. Whether it's a semi-final day or a final day, with the crowd and the atmosphere that's there, it's something you'll always remember, and it's something that you have to channel on the day and put it to good use, and use that energy that you're getting from the crowd and the spectators, and and when the Anglo-Celt is up for grabs at the end of the game, you're doing everything in your power to make sure you're the team that's lifting it.
Yeah. So finally, Frank, all things being equal, and Donegal bring their best game to Clonus on Sunday, confident you can make it 4 Ulster Championships out of 5?
Well, definitely, you're going to need a bit of luck on the day. We all know that from past finals. At a rub of the green or the bounce of the ball can just be the difference between the two teams, and especially with Monaghan and ourselves, we're so evenly matched all over the pitch. It's going to be really down to fine margins, but hopefully if we reach the levels we can, that we'll be coming back down with the cup.